As only one of 7 Canadian drivers to race in the Kart Indy Series back in the 1990s, our special guest for tonight has won the 1998 U.S. Road Racing Championship in the GT3 class, as well as the 2003 24 Hours of Daytona in the SRP2 class. Since then, he has written no less than 9 books, helping drivers to learn and unlock their speed secrets, along with a podcast of the same name. He also runs a consulting business, Bentley Performance Systems, which focuses on improving the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations. Who better to go turn by turn around Sebring International Raceway than the one and only Ross Bentley? Welcome to the show, Ross.
Thank you. Sebring is an awesome track, so I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, so this is our last event of the season. All our competitors now are here at North America's oldest permanent road racing facility. Everyone's gunning for points, trying to vie for a podium finish. So everyone's lined up at the grid, and now they're looking down the track into turn 1. Now, on paper, that looks like a standard left-hand turn. Anything particular that you would warn or coach any new drivers on this?
So the trick with turn 1 is, it is a very, very fast corner, and it's extremely bumpy. Probably the bumpiest corner, well, that in turn 17 here, of any track in North America, maybe the world. So turn 1 is difficult because you've got this wall on the inside. It's much like a street circuit where you cannot see through the corner until you're already partway into the corner. And you really have to just trust that, okay, I'm going to turn in, carry a lot of speed in, and I got it. You know, there is an apex, and you can see an apex cone up in the fence if you're watching for that kind of thing, and that's going to help you. But you then have to just really release the car off turn 1. And the big thing here again is trust the car, because it's really easy to overslow for this corner. You're going to brake probably in most cars past the bridge, and a lot of times it's not a matter of how late you brake, it's how light you brake. And in fact, a lighter braking is going to keep the car better balanced, therefore it's going to have more grip, and you're going to be able to flow speed to the corner. Mistake that a lot of drivers make is they slow the car down thinking kind of the in slow out fast mode. They overslow the car, then have to reaccelerate it, and that whole weight transfer, load transfer, change of balance of the car, it takes grip away from the car. So turn 1 is, I'm going to say, one of the 3 most important corners on this track.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Okay. So now you're coming out of turn 1, a little bit of straightaway to slight right for turn 2. But from what I can see, turn 2 going to 3, 4, and 5, that really narrows down the track as well, doesn't it?
It does. And 2 doesn't exist. It's just a little bend in the straightaway. You kind of just got to get set up for the brake zone for 3. You know, the big thing about 3 is there is no straightaway afterwards. So unlike a lot of corners where you're thinking, I got to get a good exit out of this corner, 3, it's more about how much speed can you flow into it while still making sure the car is set up in the right position to get through the little kink of 4 to get set up for turn 5. Turn 5 is critical that you get a good exit out of 5. So I think of 3, every time I come to 3, 4, 5, I think attack, attack, attack. You know, I want to flow as much speed into 3 as I can, get hard on the throttle, flat through the little kink of turn 4, and then it's a break. And at 5, I always tell myself, patience. Just take a little, like you really hustled through 1, you've hustled the car through 3, and now you get to 5, and it's like, okay, be patient, a little break, get the car to turn, then get the power. And if you have that patience, you're going to get a better exit. If you don't have that patience, you're going to start to get in the throttle too soon, and halfway through the corner, you're going to have to lift out of the throttle. So it's all about having that patience as you're coming as you approach 5. At the same time, you have to still attack it. You know, a lot of times drivers will come up to 5 and they won't be accelerating hard. So when they get to 5, you know, they lift out of the throttle a little bit, and there isn't enough weight transfer in the car to help the car to rotate, to change direction. So if you're hard on the throttle in through 4, and then that little tiny short brake for 5 is a quick brake, loads the front end up, gets the car to rotate. Now the car is pointing on the right angle past the apex, not just at the apex, but at the right angle at the apex. So then you can get the full power and get a great run out of 5. And now you're just trying to get down to hairpin turn 7 as quick as you can.
Right, because you said like to get the power out of 5, because 6, also known as Big Bend, is going to essentially one giant curve into 7, right?
Correct. In 6 is it's a straightaway. The biggest thing here is in a racing format is you get guys that are trying to pass on the right and some on the left, and it depends on the closing rates. So really got to have your eyes up and your big eyes, being aware of the mirrors, to be aware of the cars around you coming out of 5, because if the car is much quicker, could get a run around the outside and surprise you. So really keep your eyes open coming out of 5. And, you know, as you come through 6, you just let the car naturally drift out to the left-hand side to get set up for the braking zone for turn 7.
All right, now turn 7 looks like a pretty intricate turn because it's not quite exactly a true hairpin, even though it's called hairpin. It looks like it's two rights, really?
Well, it is. I mean, but really you drive it as one,
Okay.
and then the second little left-right kink it's flat. So once you get turned into 7 and you go back to power from there, you're flat all the way to turn 10 at that point. So that's your thinking when you get to turn 7. This is a corner that rewards late braking. It's also one that makes you pay the penalty if you brake too late. So it's finding that perfect spot where you can get on the brakes. And to me, what's critically important is when you apply the brakes, when you begin braking, you're already thinking about where am I going to end my braking. And typically in most cars, it's a little after the turn-in point and before the apex. So you're going to trail brake into this corner to get the car to rotate and get the car lined up so a good acceleration run out of here. Again, hard initial braking, you probably start to ease out of the brake pedal just a little bit, and then as you get to the turn-in point, you know, this is more of a crisp turn-in. You know, it's not a turn 1 where you're going to kind of bend slowly with slow hands. This is a slow corner, so you want faster hands. So you want to turn the wheel a little quicker, crisper. As you're trailing off the brakes and the car lines up to the apex, and then it's squeezing the throttle, and you're going to use the apex curbing on the right, and then you're going to use all that curbing and maybe even a little bit of the dirt on the left-hand side, that little kink, and then you line up past the next curbing on your right-hand side. And then from there, all the way to 10, you know, through the 8, 9 little bends in the straightaway, it's all about letting the car run as free as possible. So putting as little steering input in as you possibly can. Looking way ahead, thinking way ahead, and just letting the car kind of track where it wants so you're not scrubbing any speed through there. Surprising how much speed you could scrub off by not taking as straight a line as possible through those bends through there. So thinking about letting the car run free through those bends can actually pick you up a mile an hour or so on the approach into turn 10.
Wow, a mile an hour. Okay. So now, yeah, turn 10. Now you've coming in with a full head of steam going into 10. Looks like a pretty sharp right-hander. And then right after that is another left-hander 11. So would you sacrifice 10 for 11 or the other way around? Or is there any sacrifice at all?
I look at 10, 11, 12, 13. You have to look at that whole section.
Okay.
And 10, first of all, 10 looks a little tighter and slower than it really is. You can actually flow a little bit of speed into this corner. And it's going to depend on the car that you're driving. Some cars you're going to come through 10 and let the car track right out to the very left-hand edge of the road. And then you can still be flat, full throttle, all the way from there to the braking point for 13. Some cars, because you just don't have enough grip getting through that long left-hand turn 11, you have to sacrifice a little bit and not let the car track all the way out to the left-hand side exiting turn 10. You really need to experiment with that to find out. You do want to be, when you go to full throttle at 10, your goal is to be full throttle from there all the way to the brake zone for turn 13. And if that means sacrificing just a little bit of track at the exit of turn 10, maybe a car's width even, to then have the car set up so you don't have as sharp a turn around 11, that's usually a better compromise. So 10, again, is another of those corners where you can gain a little bit on the entry by braking late, but not too late. And then a nice, again, slow release of the brakes to trail the car in, to help the car turn into the apex in 10. Again, letting the car track out as you go back to full throttle. How far you go right out to the edge or not, you just have to get a feel for how much grip level your car has. And then it's really eyes up, looking way ahead to get the car to flow flat all the way around turn 11. There's a piece of pavement that is the exit of pit lane when you use the short course with the pit lane in the infield there. And you actually want to use that. You want to let the car track out of 11 and get right onto that, it actually looks like you're going beyond the track limits, but you're kind of in that extra little bit of pavement from the pit exit, from that inside track or the short track, and then line up to get the car lined up for braking for 13. How the classic thinking is you want to get the car lined up so you're parallel with the curbing on the approach to turn 13 when you brake. But to do that, you're going to have to turn the car twice. And if you just allow the car to have a little bit of an angle towards coming through 12, if you have just a little bit of an angle in the car, so you're pointing at the turn-in point for 13, you will not be perfectly parallel with that curbing, but you'll be coming up to it, easing off, and then turning into 13 from the edge of the pavement, like right at the curbing. But again, the car hasn't been alongside parallel with that curbing. You're really coming in on a slight angle to it. And 13 tower turn is, I love that corner. I think it's one of the most important corners on this track. It's to me, one of the three, because I know you can carry a lot more speed through this corner than it looks like. And part of it is, again, it's bumpy, it's got many surface changes, but it's got a little bit of camber tucked in close to the apex curbing. And if you get the car tucked right into that, you can actually turn in a little earlier than you think you should. But you trust the little bowl almost of the camber, the banking in the corner there to help you grip up, and then the car kind of turns in the center of the corner. A lot of corners you kind of initially turn in, and then as you're going past the apex, you're almost starting to unwind. This one is you kind of bend it in, and then it's almost like you tighten the wheel just a tiny, tiny little bit in the middle of the corner when you've got that little extra banking in the corner, kind of in that bowl. And then you open your hands, let the car out, and use all that curbing at the exit of 13. You want the car left side tires on that exit curbing and using every fraction of an inch that you got out there, because this is it's a pretty long straightaway from 13 to 15.
Yeah, so pretty much, okay, so it's 14 Bishop is not really, you don't even consider that kink, and that doesn't really affect anything in terms of a turn, is it?
And I can't think of a car I've never driven a car there where I've ever had to lift.
Okay.
Now, I should say that sometimes some cars on cold tires can get a little challenging through there. Some cars are very fast, and you got to be busy. You got to have the line absolutely perfect to get through there. Other cars, it's easy to be flat through there. So if you're finding that you're not flat through 14 Bishop's Bend, I think I'd work on making the line, just getting the line right. And it's really just a matter of kind of clipping that first apex, letting the car track out a little bit to the right, and then angle back in. Your goal is to have the car lined up straight braking as you approach turn 15, parallel with that curbing on the left-hand side. And that's important there, to then get the car lined up and straight braking there. And you're going to trail a lot of braking to 15, but that comes back to the line that you drive through 14.
Okay, so now coming into 15 and then linking that up with 16, what's your approach on that one then?
Well, 15, 16, a lot of people say that 16's, the most important corner on the track because it leads on the longest straightaway. It's absolutely very, very important. However, I'm not going to say it's easy. I don't think there is an easy corner at Sebring. That's what makes it such a wonderful circuit. But it's not the most challenging corner on the track. Having said that, 15, 16 is, it's going to get your attention. Come into 15, again, leave your braking as late as you can, but thinking about it as a brake zone, as, I'm going to begin braking here, but I'm going to end my braking almost into the apex curbing on your right-hand side. So you got to think about it as that's a zone, and you can move the whole zone in or out depending on what you need to do, how quickly your car can slow down, and how much load you need on the front end while you're turning into 15. 15 is all about corner entry speed. It's not an exit speed corner. It's about getting the car carrying as much speed into 15 as you can, and then kind of sometimes we'll call it 15A, 15B, the little left-hand kink between 15 and 16. That is, if you're going to sacrifice anything, you sacrifice that little section in the middle. You want to hustle, you want to be at full throttle, but then your next job is just to get set up for 16. So you're going to come around that left-hand curbing in between 15 and 16. You want to have the tires clipping at the end of that curbing so that you come over, and now you're going to move the car over off the pavement and onto the concrete. Do you put all 4 tires over there or just 2 tires over there? I'm going to say to start off with 2 tires, but definitely straddle that concrete to pavement section there, and have at least your left side tires on the old concrete runway section before you turn into 16 to get the maximum radius there. And again, some cars you can actually get all 4 tires over there to get the entire car over in the concrete to get the car to turn. What you're playing with there is the trade-off between the radius in 16, which is the larger radius is going to make you faster, but to move way out there, you're carrying a lot more distance. You're driving a lot more distance. So there's a trade-off there that you're trying to work out, and you've got to try some laps where you move the car way out there and see, okay, better radius, I'm carrying more speed, but that extra distance costs me time. Or maybe it's you haven't moved it out there enough, and sure, you're driving a shorter distance, but you don't have a big enough radius to get through 16 carrying as much speed as possible. So it's all about that trade-off of distance versus radius there. And then as you approach 16, you're going to need to give a little brush dab of the brakes. And part of it is to take a little bit of speed off, but more importantly, it's to get the front end loaded. So as you turn in, the car will then turn, and you want to get the car lined up as you turn in so that you're clipping past that apex with the right side tires on the apex curbing of 16. And then just, again, letting the car run free, opening your hands, unwinding the wheel, letting the car drive right out, and having the left side tires right on that curbing. You need to be all over that curbing of the left side tires coming out onto the back straight, because your job there is just to carry maximum momentum through 16, but to get to full throttle as soon as possible so that you get a great run down into 17.
Right.
The second most important corner on this track, or maybe first.
Right. 17's last but not least, Sunset Bend. So a lot of people tell me this is the trickiest corner off the track, and one of the trickiest in the world, probably even. What's your take on this?
Yeah, for sure, it is one of the trickiest corners. And you know what I love about 17 is it's a corner with it's got character. And to me, character corners have multiple ways to get through it. 17, there isn't like that is the line that you drive. You need to kind of find out which line your car likes. Part of it's going to depend on how well it brakes, what kind of core grip it has, what kind of acceleration capabilities it has, and most importantly, how it handles the bumps. If your car handles the bumps well, you can kind of place the car on whatever line you want. But if you've got a car that tends to skitter around on the bumps and doesn't handle the bumps as well, then part of your job is actually picking your way through the bumps. It's almost like you're driving off-road and in dirt, and you're just trying to find the smoothest line. Typically, you're going to come down the back straight. Most cars, not all, but most cars, you can actually turn in, then brake. So it's you don't brake, then turn in. It's actually you just give a little initial turn so that you turn the car in and clipping the end of, just passing by the end of the wall on your right-hand side and having the car on that angle. So you kind of angle it in at a 20-degree angle or so, but you turn in, you kind of have almost a straight line, but it's not quite straight, a little bit of wheel, but mostly straight, and then you apply the brakes as you're going past the end of the wall on your right-hand side. And then it is slowly easing out as you're tracking in and trying to tighten up the radius just a little bit. You want to look towards the bridge. Up on the bridge, there is a little mark. There's a paint mark on the bridge. And even in the sim world, that paint mark is there. You'll find something on the bridge that will tell you, I'm pointed in the right direction. And when you get the car to come in and you nice slow off the brakes and you're looking and you're lined up underneath the bridge, you go, okay, I'm going back to throttle. This is a corner that you can't just go whack back on the throttle. You're going to need to feed in, feed in, feed in, feed in. And if you're in the right place and the bumps don't upset the car too much, you just continue to feed in. And the way I look at turn 17 to exit it is, because you're on the bumpiest part of the track, you want the car to point in as straight as you can. So there's a moment in there, just a fraction of a second, where I actually open my hands up, and it's like I drive straight towards the wall at the exit. And I drive straight to it, and I'm flat to the floor, bouncing over the bumps. And then as I get closer to the wall, I don't have as much load in the car anymore, and the track is not quite as bumpy. So I can actually tighten up the wheel, just the steering, just a little bit more, and make my last little bit of turn just in the last, maybe 2 or 3 cars lengths away from the end of from the wall. You then maybe have to tighten up the wheel just a little bit to get on the right arc to drive it out onto the straightaway. And the track, the wall does kind of bulge out a little bit and then come back in. You want to use every inch of that, just with traction. I mean, you want to have the car right up there, and again, just using up all of that to carry the maximum momentum and speed out onto the front straightaway. You really need to get your eyes up in 17. It's really difficult and it's tempting for your eyes to kind of drop down and start to pick out where the bumps are and all that kind of stuff, but you need to trust where they are, and then get your eyes up. And to me, it's all about, as I'm coming in there, I'm picturing the start-finish line and going, I got to get there, because that's where this thing, either my lap time starts and ends, or this is where the race ends. And it's just like, I've got to get there. I've got to get to that finish line. I've got to get to that finish line. And with that mindset, it's like my body says, okay, guys, let's do this. Let's get this right, and just really hustle the car out of there. But for sure, 17 is, to me, 17 and 1 are what makes Sebring Sebring. It is one of the most challenging racetracks in the world because of the surface changes. You would think that because it's pretty much flat, there's no big elevation changes, how interesting would that be? Well, I think it's one of the most interesting tracks in the world because of all the surface changes. And, there are no corners on this track that are a classic 90 or 180 degree corner. Everything's got some kind of a weird twist and bend to it. Again, it's what makes this place so wonderful.
There's one lap around Sebring. So, quick question. For someone that's essentially, given this is the last race of the series and people are fighting for podium points, what would you coach a young driver in a race scenario for this? What would you tell him essentially right before he leaves and Jordan gets himself put on the grid?
So, well, the first thing I'd say is what I always make as my last thing I say is have fun, because sometimes I think we get so caught up in the competition of these things. I don't care whether you're getting paid $1 million to win this thing. You can get overly focused on I got to win. And if you really focus on, I have to have fun, and having fun is just really focusing on doing everything right. So really focusing on my performance, and the likelihood of me performing at a higher level and therefore getting the result of winning goes up. But if I'm so caught up in the, I gotta win, there's points, all this kind of stuff, the pressure puts on, I get overly focused on the result, and 9 times out of 10, I'm not gonna drive my best. So the first thing would be, I'd just say, just drive, have fun. Sebring is a great racetrack. So because there are so many good passing opportunities, turn 1 for first place is where you can first start to think about passing. The biggest thing here is the track is so wide, it's tempting that if you move to the inside to pass somebody, it's tempting to move in too far. So it's really important that you keep the car, to me, if there's a fraction of an inch between cars, perfect. You've taken control of that corner, and worst case, if the guy does turn into you, it's a minor little bump. If you are over 3 car widths away from that driver and that driver turns in and hits you, it's a big crash. So you want to be as close as you possibly can. Plus, that puts you on the maximum radius that you can be on to carry your speed through 1. So think about that if you're passing somebody into turn 1, and obviously vice versa, if you're being passed there, if somebody moves way to the inside, think about it. They've just compromised the radius of the corner. They may have the inside, but you may be able to get a run on them coming out of 1 to then either repass them down into, or possibly pass them back down into turn 3. Turn 3 is a good passing zone. It's not it's not a great passing zone. It's a good one, meaning if you've got the pace, if you're really confident that you can outbrake another car and you're close enough, you can pop out, come down the inside, pass somebody. Every now and then you see somebody try to stick a pass on the inside coming into 5 through between coming out of 3 around 4, and they just stuff it in the inside. I'm going to say 90% of the time, maybe 98% of the time, those don't work. So that wouldn't be my first place to think about making a pass. I would rather think about, okay, have a little more patience in 5 and just get set up for a monster exit at a 5 and set somebody up to outbrake them into the hairpin. Obviously, it's a classic outbraking maneuver into the hairpin. And the flip side of that is if you overshoot on the passing, the braking, and you go too deep, you've opened up the opportunity for the over-under kind of a pass where somebody comes back under and passes you or gets a better run and gets a pass back into turn 10. Turn 10 is a great passing zone on the brakes into there. Between 10 and 13, there has to be a fairly significant speed differential between cars for that to make it work. Again, every now and then you see somebody try to stuff it in the inside of turn 13 in that very short little brake zone for 13. It can work, but there has to be probably a little cooperation between drivers or a big enough differential in speeds between the cars. Again, you're better off most times to have a little patience on the entry, get a better exit off of 13 than the car you're trying to pass, and get a run on them so that you can get you're right on the tail of the other car in front of you as you come through Bishop's Bend 14, and then you can just kind of pop out to the right and stuff it into the inside of 15 and take 15 away. It's a short brake zone, and anytime you have a short brake zone, there isn't a lot of time to make an out braking maneuver, but because you've got good momentum, if you've got it close, you got your car close to the other car, and you time it just right, you can kind of just pop out, stuff it in the inside, take that corner away. Then your job is you got to get a focus. You have to focus on getting a good run out of 16. If you mess up 15 so bad that it hurts your 16, you're likely to get passed back down the back straight. So 16 is all about exit speed, getting a good run there. Trying to outbrake an equal car into 17 is, boy, that's a tough one because remember I talked about you kind of turn in and brake.
Right.
Well, as you turn in, you're pinching off that corner, the entry to that corner, so it makes it a little bit difficult. If you follow another car come in, that car turns in and then brakes, and you go just a little later, turn in a little later, kind of square the corner off a little bit and get it on a slightly different angle, you can actually outbrake the car as you're almost heading in the middle of the corner. That can work at times. It's a tough pass. I've done it. I've seen it done. I've seen it done around the outside as well. But a lot of times, if you can't get it done on that entry part, you really, again, got to be patient, focus on just getting a good exit out of 17 and think, we got to set up the pass in 17, or into turn 1, I mean. And, the great thing about Sebring, again, is it's got a lot of passing zones, so you have to think ahead. A lot of times you might be thinking, okay, I'm going to set up a pass in turn 1 next lap. So you're really just kind of getting the car in position to get a maximum acceleration out of 17 so that you've got a good run into turn 1 or whatever. So you may be thinking about making passes half a lap or a lap later, but you start to set them up right now. So you got to think long term here at Sebring. The final thing I'd say is most of these races are decided in the last few laps. So you want to be there at the end.
Right.
You want to be there in position to take advantage of it. And if you're close at the end, then you've got a shot at it. But if you make a dumb low percentage move early in the race, you're not even going to have that chance. So
right.
that, and then again, fine, have some fun with it.
Now, earlier you're saying how even on simulators, there's some reference points that exist, but in real life, like you said, the mark on the bridge, that's what you use. So for us, how does simulator data compare to real life race data acquisition?
Well, I do a lot of coaching with drivers and, have them on their sim, and I'm looking at their data. And, it's surprising how many times we've taken data from the car and then we take data from the sim and I'll overlay them in Motec. And, I'm kind of going, which one is the real car? Which one is the sim lap? and sometimes, it takes a little bit of tuning of the car to get it to match the feel of the real car. But once you get that dialed in, it's sort of fractions of a second over the course of a lap at Sebring. And, there's a lot going on at Sebring. So it's, I find the simulation, very, very accurate, and using data is a great, it's just a great tool. And, the first time that I went, wait a minute, I can download data from my sim and actually start looking at that. This is awesome. So it's a great tool.
Right. Then, do you think simulated cars should always be 100% reliable, as in like no mechanical failures, or do you try to factor that in as well, if possible?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, in some ways, I've seen it have different rules around the sim race where, you're allowed one repair during the race. Well, in real life, you probably wouldn't have gotten that one repair. So, in a sprint race kind of a format. So sometimes I think, we should make this as real as possible, and there is no reset. And, if that means you've got to drive 0.3 or a second and a half slower per lap, well, got to figure out how to go faster another way, because that's real life.
Right. Now, last but not least, so rounding back out to our series is mostly grassroots drivers, and most of our coaching is actually done with someone right seating. But the real question is, for safety, how fast would you consider is too fast for someone right seating? Or is there even such a limit?
Well, I couldn't put it in, a mile per hour, kilometer per hour kind of a deal. I think it's to me, it's dependent on obviously it's dependent on how much trust you have in the driver. If the driver will listen to every single word and is able, not just listen to, but is able to follow the suggestions, commands, the communication coming from the instructor, that's one of the factors. I think the other factor is, what's the safety equipment on that side? Because, I have been asked to sit in the right seat of a car where I've got a driver that's in a full halo seat and Hans device and everything. And, it's kind of like, well, there's a 3-point harness in a production seat over there. Hop in. It's like, how is this fair?
Right.
So I think it's a little bit dependent on that. No, I'd say very much dependent on that. The other thing that kind of related to this though is, I do some work with drivers in a sim. Is one of the great things is that I can be in that car, simulated in that car with that driver, and if they have a crash, well, I didn't get hurt.
Right.
And I can coach them on the same techniques that I could if I was actually physically in the car with them. So that sim is a wonderful tool.
Right. Well, thanks a lot for taking time with us, Ross. Is there anything you'd like to talk about? What you're doing up to? What you want us to follow or check out?
Well, I just the sim racing stuff. It's wonderful to watch actually right now, and I don't get enough time myself to drive, but because I'm so busy doing coaching. And if anybody wants resources for anything, I mean, in fact, we have a virtual track walk video that myself and fellow coach Peter Kraus did of Sebring, and it's on my website at speedsecrets.com. In fact, I have a bunch of resources at speedsecrets.com. If you really, you want to become a better driver, I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of question answer kind of a format. I've got a bunch of resources, ebooks that are free or $2.99. A lot of resources at speedsecrets.com. So go and check that out. And if you don't mind, follow me on social media. You can find me on Facebook, or Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. But, follow me there, because then I get to follow you back and I get to see what you're doing. I love watching and seeing what drivers are doing and who's doing what. So as I always say, keep learning and having fun. That's what this is all about.